What if you could relive your happiest memories? But the deeper you go, the more they start to fall apart. This is Subliminal. Made by a team at Accidental Studios, led by Sven Yu. I just recently streamed Subliminal on my Twitch channel, and I enjoyed it, but there were definitely some problems, some major flaws. So I'm making this review to talk about Subliminal, because I think it's getting a little too much hate for what it is. But at the same time, I'd like to talk about what worked and what didn't work. So my name is Gamma B, and this is my review of Subliminal. Now, we're gonna start by talking about the good things, because there's, you know, who likes a negative Nancy in this day and age, am I right? This is the good. So our main character's name is Caleb, and I'll kind of give you a rough synopsis of the story to start. Without too many spoilers. I mean, you know, there's not really much to spoil, but I want you to still walk away from this review potentially wanting to experience the game for yourself, because it's pretty cheap and it's a pretty short experience. So maybe you'll want to go play it. So anyways, we have our main character Caleb, and he seems to be going through some kind of, we don't know why, but he seems to be diving deep into his memories. It almost feels very similar to Superliminal, a game about diving into your dreams, which is also not connected in any way, except, and I noticed this while I was playing the game, there is the narrator.
Another great question. It's quite simple. All you need to do
in Superliminal, who kind of talks, you know, he talks in your ear. He's kind of like the narrator from Stanley Parable, who is voiced by the same narrator who is in Subliminal.
Hello, my name is Dr. Glenn Pierce.
And I thought that was pretty cool. But anyways, that's the only similarity. Besides names being similar, they're completely different games made by completely different people.
He's called, hello, my name's Dr. Glenn Pierce.
So anyways, the story was pretty cool. Like, it felt very intriguing. I wanted to know why Caleb was, you know, why he was diving into his memories and why he was talking to his subconscious the whole time, right? Like, it felt very intriguing. There was a lot going on in the background of these memories. The first memory is Caleb is in his, what looks to be his childhood home, presumably his childhood home. It's messy. There's details that are kind of creepy. There's toys, you know, maybe he had a good childhood, maybe he didn't. It's hard to say really, but there's lots of hints that something starts to go wrong. There's something trying to get into the memory while your subconscious
Doors on either side of this room. And if one starts to creep open, hurry over and close it.
Basically says, make sure the lights stay on, make sure the doors stay closed, don't let something in. But we don't know what. And that is really intriguing. And this is basically how the demo is. This is the demo, this is the introduction to the game, and this is what really sold people on Subliminal. Now, I didn't play the demo, but I really enjoyed it. Like, I watched some things on the demo and it was really intriguing. I remember, I think I watched Queso play the demo, but it was really intriguing. It was spooky. It was like, I don't know what's out there and I don't know why there's something else in my memories, but I don't want to let it get in. And that was fucking scary. That was pretty fucking scary. So anyways, throughout the entirety of the game, there's lots of hints to what might be affecting Caleb so much. And it's hard to say why he's in his memories. Like I said, we don't really get any answers on why Caleb is here. Why is he in his memories? Why is he so adamant on reliving his positive memories, I guess you could say? Because that's what the subconscious wants you to do. He says, here's this meter that shows how much joy we're taking from these memories, these awesome memories you had as a kid. And as you explore the memories, you start to notice this tar, this black goop that is leaking from, you know, you're in like a water park, and there's black tar on the floors, smeared on the steps. There's black tar dripping from slide. It's very unsettling. And anytime you try to investigate, your subconscious or the narrator just says, oh, just wash it off. Just ignore it. It doesn't matter. You know, we need to focus on the joyful memories. We don't need to be looking at this right now. It was intriguing. There was a lot of stuff about someone named Lily. In the childhood home, we can see a C and an L, as if, you know, C loves L or kind of something like that. And it's very clear now that it's someone named Lily, possibly like a heartbreak, maybe. You know, maybe they broke Caleb's heart, or maybe they died. Maybe it was his wife and she died or something. It's really hard to say, but There's a lot, I would probably say this is the best part about Subliminal. There's a lot of interesting story that's been woven into this world that is really intriguing. I want to know more. I want to know why Caleb is here. I want to know why he's in his memories, why the narrator is trying to shoo us away from all the negative stuff so much. There was clearly some sort of trauma that was affecting Caleb, and the narrator didn't want him to look or think about it, blocking him off from certain areas or getting mad when Caleb doesn't follow instructions. It felt very Stanley Parable in nature, which was neat, but it was a bit too similar to the Stanley Parable. I really hope that in episode 2 they elaborate on it more. I think by far the story was the best part of the game, despite, you know, not really much being there in terms of story. It was intriguing. It was small, you know, it's very compact in terms of a story. It's not like a AAA game or something that, you know, it's not like Poppy Playtime where you're constantly getting lore and you're constantly getting story. It's very subliminal in its storytelling, I guess you could say. And there's a lot of potential, and there's a lot of spooks to be had in this psychological horror game. The atmosphere was great. I think that was obviously in addition to the graphics looking awesome. You know, it really makes you feel like Caleb has some sort of mental health problem going on here that he's exploring in this trip in his memories. And at times it can really feel like it reflects what it feels like mentally. You're trying your hardest, but no matter what, it doesn't work out. And that makes you feel fundamentally flawed sometimes. And that's something that's actually directly said in the game. And I think that's pretty apt, you know, it's pretty accurate. I think the game has a really good way of making you feel uncomfortable. It's very liminal space with its atmospheres, you know, unfinished buildings or empty water parks, like things like that are very liminal, very backrooms-esque. And I like that. Personally, I find it intriguing to want to explore those worlds. That's what makes pictures like the Backroom so interesting, is people want to be like, what's the deal with this picture? And there's a lot of really lame ways to ruin that. And they kind of ruin it, which we'll talk about later. But I want to talk about the good stuff first. The liminal space is great. And you know, I think it's interesting. I think it's great. Now, in terms of the good, that's pretty much it. So yeah, that's pretty much it for like the good stuff. We're gonna move on to the bad now. I would say a big issue was player guidance. It was very straightforward in terms of where you needed to go, except there were a lot of places you could go and the narrator would stop you. And I know I said this was a good thing before, and it is a good thing for world building, you know, the idea of trying to explore the darker parts of your mind and your subconscious stopping you, saying, don't look over there. That's not important. Don't look over there. And there is an ending tied to doing that. Like when my first playthrough, I mostly didn't listen to the narrator because I wanted to see what was going on. I wanted to find out who Lily was. I wanted to see what this black tar was. You know, why is it so prevalent? You know what I mean? So that was interesting, but every time you would try to explore somewhere else, the game would literally force your character back and put in these little these little stop signs that just said you can't go over there. And sometimes that was frustrating. If you look at it from a game mechanic perspective, that's very annoying to be told, no, you can't go over there. Don't go over there. But to be, you know, from the story aspect, it works for the game. It's good. You know what I mean? Now, in terms of the puzzles, there were a lot of them that were bad. There were some that were way too easy, just supers. They literally give you the answer right in your fucking face. And there were others where they wouldn't tell you anything. 3, 1, 2, no, okay. Dude, there's like 6 different ways you can interpret this. I'm mad at that. I'm mad at that. I don't think that's fair. Where there was clearly a puzzle, you had to, you know, use the light power to open doors and power this switch and blah, 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 blah. But it didn't make sense. Like, you know, there wasn't anything that was inherently obvious about solutions. There was multiple times where I would figure out a puzzle and I was like, I guess that works. I didn't even, like, I remember one specific time where I was like, I don't even know what I did, but it worked. But it opened the door, so whatever. I did it. I don't know how I did it, but I did it. Why did that? And that, you know, that was pretty bad. That wasn't great for a game about puzzle solving. You know, there was a lot of stuff with puzzles that got removed in patches. Like shortly after the game came out, there were some puzzles that people really, really didn't like.
Forward 2 steps back. Wait, I'm actually stupid. That was the dumbest thing I have ever done in my life.
And so obviously they were frustrating. They weren't clear with what you wanted to do, what they wanted you to do and what you needed to do. And eventually it got to the point where a lot of puzzles got reworked and a lot of puzzles got like there was one puzzle that got removed completely. And I don't know if there were any other puzzles that got removed, but I know like there were a lot of puzzles in the game that got changed, which I find frustrating because it feels like they could have play tested this. They could have gotten 1 or 2 people to play the game and said, hey, just play through the game and write down every issue you have, anything, you know. They could have done that, but they clearly didn't for some reason. Maybe they did, and you know, whoever this genius was just fucking figured it out the entire time. And playtesting, here's the thing, playtesting should not be the devs playing through the game, because as a creator, you have a fundamental understanding of how things work because you built it, right? So you need an outside, naked perspective. Someone who doesn't know what they're doing, they don't know how to solve any of the puzzles, and you just let them go. Like one person, if you had one person do it, it would have really, really helped with making the puzzles like balancing the puzzles more. I think that would have greatly benefited the game. But like I said, the puzzles were either, to simplify it, the puzzles were either too simple or too complicated with too much information in your face all at once. It was frustrating. Like I played the more quote unquote balanced version of the game, and I was still getting frustrated at certain points. It wasn't too bad, but it was still pretty bad. And to be completely fair, it's not like all of the puzzles were bad. There were specifically 2 that I think fit the themes incredibly well and are a great puzzle that the player can piece together without too much effort. There were 2 puzzles that used actual subliminal messaging. There was a big TV theme and like static and you know, flipping through commercials really fast or flipping through channels really fast. And there was a puzzle in the intro section and there was a puzzle in the play section where basically a TV was flipping through channels repeatedly and quickly, and it was actually telling you something in either the imagery or the words and the messages that were coming out of the TV directly. Tic-tac-toes. Tic-tac-toes. And granted, you know, maybe that was a little too on the nose in some of the puzzles, but to be completely honest, for a game called Subliminal, having subliminal messaging puzzles is fucking awesome. Yep.
Wonderful. Excellent work, Caleb.
Use that big old brain of mine. Now let's talk about the monster. And this is what I meant when I was talking about the liminal space. They kind of ruined it with this monster creature. I'm not really opposed to having a monster or a creature that's constantly chasing you. And it did feel like this monster was some sort of representation of negative thoughts or mental health issues, or maybe it's fucking cancer for all I know in Caleb's brain. Who knows? The monster design itself was bland. It was boring. It looked scary for the sake of being scary and not actually, you know, ominous or creepy. It was just some weird gray monster with spiky teeth and creepy bulging eyes, and it's like, that's not, you know, maybe if you're a kid that's freaky, but as an adult, and most gamers are adults probably, hopefully, maybe not hopefully, maybe not hopefully, it's not that scary. And the only time it is scary is because there were chase sequences that would trigger your fight or flight. And I am very susceptible to this, where when I'm running from something and I hear boom, 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 boom behind me, that freaks me out. But the second I die to it, it's no longer scary. And this was a big issue with Poppy Playtime Chapter 5, where it wasn't clear where they wanted you to go. And I know, different developer, but I'm using this as an example. It's not clear. It wasn't clear where they wanted you to go a lot of the time in the chase sequences. In Subliminal, I'm talking about Subliminal right now, but I'm referring to Poppy Playtime. It wasn't clear where they wanted you to go in the chase sequences. And when you died, it was no longer scary. And it was kind of lame. It ruined these creepy, ominous environments that had a lot of uneasiness to them by saying, oh, the environment is no longer what's going to freak you out. It's the fucking spiky teethed monster that's going to chase you. That's going to freak you out. It's like, this game didn't really need a monster. They could have, let me tell you something. If there is a developer listening to this, and I really hope there's not, and I really am sure there won't be, because I'm, small nobody YouTuber, hello. There doesn't need to be a monster. Don't show the monster. The less you explain to the player about the monster, the more scarier it is, the more unsettling it is. That demo that I was talking about earlier, that intro to the game, where you don't know what's gonna happen if you leave the doors open or if you leave the lights off, that's what made that so scary. That made that so ominous. There was something trying to get in and you didn't know what it was. And that was scary. That was really scary. Not to mention that the mini game with the lights and the doors wasn't very difficult. It wasn't hard, it wasn't easy, but it was just at that difficulty level where a player could understand what they need to do, and you fail in that mini game, it's kind of your own fault. It's not like a chase sequence where if you don't know where you're going because the game hasn't guided you and you're being chased by something, so obviously you're panicking, that's the game's fault because they're not making it clear where you need to go. But in this instance, it's very clear what you need to do, and it's very clear how you can avoid dying. So by the end of that sequence, I didn't know what was trying to get into the room, and that unsettled me. That made me uncomfortable in the best way. I don't think there's anything wrong necessarily with having a monster, but you need to make it unpredictable. Look at something like Alien Isolation. There's a monster, all right, and it's everywhere. Granted, that's a complicated monster in this example, but what makes the monster in Alien Isolation scary is that you don't know what the fuck it's gonna do. You don't know if it has gotten used to your flamethrower. You don't know if it's gotten used to your traps. You don't know. Even though you can see it, you don't know what it's going to do, and that is fucking piss scary. Anyways, tangents aside, I don't think the monster was scary. I think there shouldn't have been a monster. I think you can have a monster, but I didn't know why I was running from this monster. Like, Poppy Playtime, Alien Isolation, you know why the monster's coming to get you. You know why, for the most part. They're trying to kill you, right? Plain and simple. But in this instance, you're in your memories. What is the risk of dying here? There is none. Maybe there's a risk of dying, but we don't know that. You haven't explained that. And that's okay, right? Like that it just means that you need to think about that. Now, let's move on to, I'm going to move on before I keep going on this. The memory meter. The memory meter was kind of pointless. I see what they were trying to go with it. It was essentially, for those of you who haven't played the game, you got this little memory meter that's basically, the narrator explains to you that the memory meter is the meter that indicates how much joy we've gotten from this memory. And we'll use that to make you happy, I guess. I don't really remember what the reason for that was. It felt like a mechanic that would have had some sort of interesting way it interacted with each memory. It just didn't. Like, you could have had something where you had to seek out and find joy from each memory, individual moments in each place that you go to that would have brought you joy and filled up the meter. But it kind of, I'm going to be honest, it kind of just felt like a how close am I to finishing the game meter. Because the more it filled up, the more I was closer to the game being over. And that's not really what you want players to, to come to that conclusion. Maybe I'm a minority. Maybe I didn't think, maybe I thought about it too hard. Maybe. I don't know. Now, the story. Like I said, I was really intrigued by the story and a lot of the ideas that come, with being in your memories and having something wrong, but you don't quite know what's wrong with your memories, and you don't know really why you're there. And having questions is great. Giving the player questions to wonder why someone's where they are. Why is the main character from Poppy Playtime in the Playtime Co factory? We don't know yet. But it's also been like 3 or 4 years and we still don't fucking know. So please, 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 if you're going to set up a story, you need to have a plan. You need to get to a point, hopefully, you know, depending on what you're doing. I'm not a storyteller in nature, okay? I just like playing the video games. I just like playing the video games. But when you have a story, people like it when you find conclusions to things. And you can leave things open-ended too. That's great. You could, you know, you could not explain this at all. But look at something like Superliminal. I'm talking about Superliminal, not Subliminal. All right, just a quick clarification. Superliminal, the story is that you're going inside your dreams to work something out. You don't know what. And then by the end of the game, after spiraling through this, oh my God, I'm going deeper and deeper into my dreams and I'm never getting out. And the people on the outside talking to you going, yeah, we don't know why you're going deeper. We're kind of, you know, you're kind of stuck right now. Just sit tight and we'll get you out. And you're like, holy shit, I'm stuck in my fucking dreams. This is really scary. But then you get to the end and you know, I'm going to spoil Superliminal. Okay, I'm going to spoil Superliminal here. So if you want to skip bit in the future and avoid the future, you know, skip like 20 seconds of the future or something, but you get to the end and the people on the outside, they tell you this was the plan the whole time. You know, there's this really nice monologue that I've listened to a few times over the years that just, it's nice to listen to. It's satisfying. It's basically is like this guy saying, everyone who comes to the Institute to do this dream experiment, they have fundamentally lost control of something in their life and they're trying to get it back. And this was how you did it. You just have to wake up, which was beautiful for Superliminal. It was beautiful. Now, Subliminal, obviously because of the chapters, which we'll get to that. The chapters being a thing, this was chapter 1. We got chapter 2 coming up. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. I just, if you're going to have a story like this where you're in your memories, there has to be a point to it. And I'm really hoping that in chapter 2, if this is the last of Subliminal, that we find out, we get some answers to some of the interesting aspects of the game. Now, I know a lot of people who streamed the game, played it, queso, moist critical. I think they're being too critical with the game. I think they're looking at it for what they wanted it to be rather than what it is. And I think the little details, the story, the world around you was interesting to look at. And I'm hoping that story goes somewhere. I'm hoping that this world goes somewhere. And I hope that it finds a meaningful, doesn't have to be fucking cinematic, the best thing I've ever seen, but I want it to be satisfying. You know what I mean? I hope you know what I mean, the hypothetical viewer. Now, we're going to talk about releasing the games as chapters being a very bad idea. I don't like that Poppy Playtime is starting this trend of selling each individual chapter as its own experience, rather than as one whole game. And for a small studio, I understand that maybe some funds are needed to make ends meet, but you're not doing yourself any favors by releasing it like this. It just leaves this bad taste in a player's mouth. It's, you know, when you finish an experience, when you finish a game, you're done. You know, you finish reading a book, you're done. You don't have to fucking read the next book because, you know, the first book left on a cliffhanger, and I know there's lots of books that do that, but it's nice when you read a small book and you finish it and that's the end of the book. You know what I mean? And it's the same for video games. It's nice to have games that come to a meaningful conclusion. And if there is a sequel, and in this case, chapter 2, we have to see a continuation. But cliffhangers are fucking cringe, okay? I'm just gonna say this. Cliffhangers are fucking cringe. I like them, but it is just taking advantage of your FOMO. I swear to fucking God, they're cringe as hell. Kind of lost where I was going with this point. But anyways, all I'm saying is it's nice to have a finished experience. And then if there's a sequel, they're more willing to dive into it because it's not this big commitment. You know what I mean? Like if Persona 5 was split up into 4 fucking games that are 20 hours in length each, there would be the more chapters you do, the more games you do that are all one story, the less likely people are to play the fucking 4th game because they got to play game 1, game 2, game 3, game 4. So there's going to be a lot less people playing chapter 2 because you're releasing it as chapter 1 and 2. We don't know anything about what's going on in this world, in this game. In chapter 1, we didn't really get a meaningful conclusion. We got a fucking cliffhanger that wasn't really a cliffhanger, that was left open and kind of open to interpretation, and that's cool, sure, to some way, but there was nothing answered. Like, all the endings were kind of lame. I think working on those endings would be great. I think you guys need to, I'm going on a huge tangent here about a million different things, but let me get back on point here real quick. The chapter setup, releasing the game as chapters, is not a good idea. It just screams, we wanted money now and we didn't finish our game fully, so we're gonna split it up into 2 chapters. It's like, just, I get it if you need to make ends meet, you need some funds, whatever. As a small company, sure. If it's one full experience, then people are more likely to play that and see it for what it is than to have to think about what it's going to become if it's bad or good. Because now, here's the thing. Here's the big key factor about what's gonna make this a problem. If chapter 2 sucks, this game, it fucking sucks. And if chapter 2 is great, then half the game is kind of mid. You get what I'm saying? Like, I don't think chapter 1 totally sucked cock and balls. I think it was pretty solid, actually. For what it is, I think it's solid. For a $10 game, it's not too bad. But I'm hoping that chapter 2 improves upon the faults of chapter 1, and I hope we learn something. And I'm saying this because I'm passionate about this. I'm angry that there are so many people online saying, oh, this fucking game, this game that clearly had some passion put into it and some unique ideas, this shit's ass. This shit's ass, because I watched a YouTube video about it. It's like, did you play the game yourself? Did you form your own opinion? No, you didn't. So please, please, please form your own opinions about this. Oh, I keep going on tangents, man. I gotta really stay on track here. Okay, now one more thing I wanted to talk about before we get to the conclusion is you can really tell, looking back at the trailers, that they didn't really have a direction per se. Now, I don't know what their plan was. I don't know what direction they were taking. I'm speaking clearly from, this is the perspective of an outside viewer looking in. It feels like they didn't know what kind of game they were making. Like, a lot of it really wanted to focus on the liminal space aspect, and there's environments that we can see in trailers like hospitals. There's very much backroomsy. It almost looks like it has the walls of a bathroom with floors that are just water, and it really feels like there's even a few different monsters you can see in some of the early trailers from like a few years ago. So it really feels like development changed quite a bit, and maybe these are things that we'll see more in the second chapter. It's really hard to say, but it feels like they didn't have a solid grasp on what they wanted to do. Let's move on to the conclusion of this, because this is becoming a 30-minute recording, and that's a lot of editing for me. I think it's really disingenuous to look at a game like this, and because it's not exactly what people thought it would be, they automatically label it as bad, because it's not what they wanted it to be. I think sometimes it's really important to sift through something complicated like this and pull out the good from the bad. You know what I mean? Why would I want to play a game that just sucks and isn't fun if I didn't want to come out of it having experienced something new, something of value? I have this perspective that I don't know if I'd say it's interesting or unique or whatever. Maybe it's not, who knows? But I try to pull value out of everything that I see, everything I do, everything that happens to me. I try to see the value. You know, I like the silver lining on anything. I see a bad movie, I try to say, okay, what was good about it? Because what's the fucking point of walking away from something like this, miserable about it, saying, well, that fucking sucked? You now are basically, imagine having the entire team of people who worked hard in this game for months sitting in front of you, and you're on a stage and you have to go, this fucking sucks. And I'm not saying that because I'm afraid to say it's a bad game. I'm saying that because there's good things here. This is not a Poppy Playtime Chapter 5. This is Subliminal. This is above Poppy Playtime in a lot of ways, but also underneath Poppy Playtime in a lot of ways. It is a strong start. And that is the point of this review, is that it is a strong start. It's not a perfect game by any stretch, but it's a solid start. I don't want to walk away from this review hating the game and refusing to give the team another chance with Chapter 2. I think they could have something great here. We all make mistakes, and I hope Team Subliminal will learn from their mistakes. If they really want to appeal to the psychological horror aspect, they need to lean more into mysterious memories and environments and freaky set pieces, and less so on generic monster chase sequences. You know what I mean? I think Subliminal has potential. Like, I hope you can hear it in my voice. I didn't think I would get this passionate about it while writing this script and reading this script, because not only am I reading a script right now, but I'm going off this script a fucking lot. Like, a lot. Because I feel like I'm angry, I'm passionate, you know what I mean? The hype behind this game was substantial. It was pretty big. I remember hearing about this game years ago. It was big to the point of mainline streamers like Mr. Moisty and Mr. 1x1 Lego Piece playing the game, and they both hated it. They both were like Keisho gave it a 1 out of 10 and Moist Critical agreed with him. And that was like, I don't want to be the kind of person that's like, oh, I like it because I want to be different. No, I like it because there's actual value here. There's potential, and I appreciate that. And to be fair, Moist Critical does say there is potential here, and it's a shame that it went the direction it did. And I do kind of agree with that. It's not garbage. It's not shovelware. It's not like, I guess the best way to put it is it's one of the games of all time. It's got some good, it's got some stuff, you know, it's the definition of mid. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's in the middle. It's medium. You know what I mean? It's not good. It's not bad. It's medium. It's got a balance of both. It's kind of a balanced breakfast, if that makes any sense. And granted, you could say, oh, but there's lots of other games that are like kind of medium. They're kind of good, kind of bad, that are much better than this. And I agree. But like I said, you got to remember, this is a small indie team doing something for pretty much the first time. Should they have play tested it? Oh yeah, big time. They should have gotten a bunch more people to play the game. They should have gotten at least, like, even just having 1 or 2 people play test the game. In the state that it was in, they probably wouldn't have released the game, not as early as it was and not as confusing as it was with certain puzzles. I hope the team doesn't feel discouraged from all the negative backlash. Despite how difficult it may be at times seeing people really tear this game apart, I really hope they don't take it personally. And I understand it's hard not to. I really understand it's hard not to. It just needs work, and that's okay. I liked the game, but I also like giving things the benefit of the doubt, you know, seeing the silver lining. But Subliminal needs work. And I can only hope that the team behind Subliminal, I hope they improve upon the faults of Chapter 1 when they're finished with Chapter 2. I hope Chapter 2 is good. I really do. I really hope it's a banger. I hope it's a banger. I really do. And I guess we should get to the actual conclusion. I would give it a 4 out of 10, but that's a bit too harsh in my opinion. 4 out of 10 feels like a Poppy Playtime Chapter 5. Or what else? What else would be bad? A Battle for Neighborville, sure, that's a 4 out of 10. But do I think Subliminal deserves that harsh punishment? No. I think it's at the very least and most, a 5 out of 10. It's a good game, but it needs some work. My name is Gamma B, and this has been my review on Subliminal. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't be afraid to hit subscribe, hit the like button, go check out my review on Huntsman, or go watch the full VOD on my VODs channel from me playing the entirety of Subliminal. I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you guys in the next one. Ciao.